going on anyway? That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to give you certainty or answers. I'm just here to contemplate this. I'm Ann Headley, and this is my podcast. It's a bi-weekly contemplation where I use my intuition to share a story about this moment now. Welcome. I do sometimes wonder about this quest for meaning. And as I scroll social media, primarily Instagram, I go through different themes that are fed to me. And some of those themes are highly New Age spiritualists who have the answers. For some people, the answer is conspiracy, and some people, the answer is activism, and for some people, the answer is political. But there are people who seem to have a lot of answers, or at least that's how they come across. And I know for sure that the answer probably, for me, is inside of unfolding questions. That feels more sustainable to me. So this last new moon, I don't know if you listened. You can go back and listen to the last podcast if this is coming to you fresh. But I said, get ready, because this time is all about new beginnings and starting things fresh. And I still sort of believe that. And here we are at the full moon of that fresh starting new moon. My title was Starting Over, Babies. And this is so interesting. This is the full pink moon, the culmination of that starting over, babies. The intelligence, the wisdom, the guidance right now is take all of that and throw it out. We've been getting this a lot. Throw it into the compost. Now, everything has to be given the chance to rot away or thrive. So we have to somehow see if these ideas, these new things, if they actually want to sprout on their own. And if we want that too, now. Let me see if I can try to explain this to you. It's sort of like my old patterns were I wanted something to happen, and I thought that I would create the idea, and then I would work really hard, and I would make it happen, sort of no matter what. And this right now, the way I'm seeing it, it's the beginning of working in ways that are all about collaboration, not just with other people, but collaboration with the elements. It's not about seeing what you can push through to something to produce what you already know. You know, it's almost like if you can think it, that's already been done. It's allowing your thoughts to be seeds that take on a life of their own. So what are these ideas? What kind of creations? And it doesn't have to be, I've got lots and lots of ideas. I know some people do, but sometimes it's really more of a feeling tone that we have seeds for. But I don't want to get too esoteric right now. So let's just call it creations. What creations want to have a life of their own? As you find collaborators with people, with spaces, gardens, with other beings, with other ideas, with those collaborations, these collaborations in this new time, with this full moon and moving forward, you can't force them to happen. So it is a lot of going with the flow with the intention of things happening. It's a new way of doing this, and it has to do with true relationship. And it, I think for me, feels very foreign to the patterning that I'm coming from. This isn't something that can be predicted. You can't foresee it if you can know that's not it. I feel like I've got a little puppet, like a little Yoda puppet in my hand. I'm trying to bring this one through. It's not like you can't say, I want to have a scrambled egg sandwich, see it, and have that scrambled egg sandwich. But the kinds of creations, collaborations coming from our real freedom and sovereignty, not externally, because that is all fucked up right now, but internally, those things, we can't know how that looks. I really think this is something new, and I really feel very is it vulnerable? I feel so on the edge of being saccharine about this, because I feel a certain excitement about it, and I feel a certain clarity. Maybe it's because I really want to know who I am as I express my sovereignty. And it's really important to me. And I wish that it was important for other people. So maybe I'm like projecting that a little bit. And I'm trying not to be that kind of a seer, right? Oh gosh. So I'm treading this little line that I'm collaborating with my own intuition and these forces around me that want me to be evangelical. I want to preach and say, this, if you just do it this way, everything will be fine. But really, it's this, that's not the real truth for me. I'm really so invested in knowing who I am if I express my knowing and my sovereignty together in the world. And I know that also means that some of my relationships based on order and social conditioning may not survive this. And some will appear because of this too. So we can't predict this future of sovereignty. It can't be known in this moment of this great grand adventure. So my advice or my intuition for this full moon is throw it all out. All of those things that you're so excited about, that if you could have this story, which is it was hard for so long, it was really, really hard. And then, but this new frontier is arriving and it won't be hard anymore. It'll be different. Whatever those ideas are, let's throw those all out onto the compost pile. Give it all away. Hold your hand wide out open. So this is a huge moment of letting go. A parigraha in Sanskrit is the non-gripping. It's one of the yamas. Don't hold on to things too tightly, which is, wise. This is a real moment of letting go. See what comes back. See what stays. See what transforms. See what appears out of nothing. This full moon is to let it all go. Go to sleep. And then see what's there in the morning. This full moon can acknowledge that we have arrived in a time. And look, the full moon has passed. I love to try to get these podcasts out before that actual moment of the fullness of the moon or the preciseness of the new moon. But this time, nope. I just needed to get through the whole moon and feel it all. And so we've arrived at this time. It's almost like this full moon is a signpost, or it's like one of those green interstate signs that, okay, so we've arrived or we're near this time where inner authority is the ruling party. The spiritual political space or realm we had a majority vote for inner authority as the ruling party. That's what I want to think. That's my fantasy. And I've talked about things being inside out and upside down. I feel like I've talked about that over and over again. But I want to point out right now how that fits here. If it's more important to respond to your innermost guidance than to please some external source of authority. And for those of us who are old enough, I think maybe there are people, and people who've already overcome this particular conditioning. I don't think we quite understand how that shifts everything. So I think with this full moon, we're starting to get a little taste of this new structure. I think it can be both liberating and incredibly frustrating. And that helps me understand this giant compost pile we're sitting in. Some ways of being, they just don't work anymore, and they have to be recycled. I suspect that you will have some moments of wonderful shifts, easy joys, which can be as simple as driving and enjoying the way the light is falling, that your mind can be filled with that rather than being occupied by some stress, some future stress that might typically have worried you. And this will be exactly adjacent to the sort of exhaustion that goes along with new thinking and new patterning. Just think for a moment about a baby learning to walk and how deeply they sleep, how much new ways of experiencing their physicality equals the deep need to rest before they attempt again to try this new form of locomotion. I think we're kind of like babies now. I just traveled down to Virginia to visit my mom with my kids. We've sort of had this long-standing tradition with the kids where when they were little, we went down to Virginia, or the four of us went down to Virginia. We would leave Maine and come down for sometimes as long as 6 weeks. And that became one of the things that we did as part of their growing up. We haven't done that in a long time. And so there was this sort of new way of seeing it. And I was talking to my sister, and somehow she and Mom thought it would be good because this is so normal in our family. If anybody's getting together, it's sort of an open invitation. It's like we all love each other so much, and it is so much fun when we get together that one of the conversations I was having with her, she said, okay, well, we'll be there. And something inside me went, ugh! And my history would be, okay, this is great, we'll do this. But there was something inside of me that just, it was like a feeling of condensing and heaviness. And I knew that I had to advocate for this particular visit, that it was just me and the boys this time. It was a short visit. If it had been a couple of weeks, it would have been a lot easier to fit everything in. And that hardening inside of me was this certainty that I had to have this conversation with my sister that I did not want to have, saying, hey, I just want to go alone. I don't want to have a shared visit this time. It's just not in our patterning. I'm trying to explain this. Maybe you've got similar family stuff. And I had to get really brave and have that conversation. And she was beautiful. She understood. We talked about it, talked about how we could find other, ways for us to get together in future. It wasn't the conversation. The conversation was wonderful, but it was everything that happened to me before that conversation, working through all the old patterns and ways that I didn't have a say in family life. It was chaotic And it was wonderful, and it was awful, and it was like being in a washing machine with everyone. And fun things are happening, but also really lots of tolerating things that are stressful and too much, just overwhelming, And this is the first time I could feel the distinction of advocating for myself, of having this inner authority that said, I know how I want this to go, and you're the only one that can make that happen. So many times I've abandoned myself in situations that don't feel like big deals, but they actually are. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's the kind of time that I'm talking about, that I think we're meant and somehow have the strength to say, this is for me, this is not for me. And knowing that the synchronicities or the collaborations around whatever comes up when we advocate for that inner knowing will be right, or will lead us to the next, right and wrong, blah, 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 blah. But there was something in me where I felt proud of myself. There was a part of me that said, hey, you really do care about me. And that is just, that's just new patterning for me. Maybe you're way beyond that and that's so easy for you. It's not easy for me. And it's still becoming something that I'm learning to trust my own self around. Another way I'm thinking about this is in the unschooling community, there's often a big topic or a big discussion. If you go onto these forums, you can read about this, around things that we think kids have to do. Like they have to brush their teeth, they have to get up early in the morning, they can't stay up late. Just ways that are so normal, that parenting ways that are so normal that we're sure that this is the right way. But in these forums, these people are so invested in the thinking around things. They're ready to pull things apart. And that's the essence of unlearning, which is so intelligent, I think. Where does our thinking come from? Okay, so that's my judgment around it. So you already know. But this big topic of conversation comes up because parents are so worried. A lot of kids will stay up late at night when they approach adolescence and beyond, and they will sleep the morning hours. And it's so confrontive to many parents because we believe with this kind of internal structure, it's deeply seated, and it can be very violent even, that the only way to exist as a productive citizen is someone who wakes early to begin laboring for an external authority. I think that's what it breaks down to. What if you can never wake up early to get to work? That's the big fear of parents. It can drive us absolutely bonkers to have children who are absolutely sure that it's okay with their inner guidance to stay up late. So the kind of comments that show up will be like, how will they ever have a job? Or how will they be able to participate in society if they can choose their own sleep cycles? And then there'll be parents who have older kids, and they'll report back that, they're just extremely adaptable. That when something comes up that they want to make sure that they participate in, they adjust, they make the adjustments that they need. But when they do have open, wide schedules, sometimes those night hours are so rich, wonderful, and nourishing for that sense of, needing the world to kind of go away so that you can explore. I know I love that about those nighttime hours. I also love sleeping. And I think letting kids experience both is it's just so wonderful and challenging and like revolutionary and confrontive. And I don't even talk to people very often about how much freedom I offer my kids because it's so confrontive to the conditioned way of being. And people often don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. I don't need to talk about it. But I can say that it's really interesting to question why we think we have to do certain things when there really isn't an external authority saying you have to. I understand if you have a job, you need to go and not get fired. That is important. But what if you don't have to be somewhere, but you are waking up? Well, we were talking about this just recently, sitting in a circle with some friends. I just wake up and start suffering. That was the thing. I just wake up and start worrying. And I wonder what it's like to not inflict that conditioning if it's not authentic to the inner authority. I woke up in the middle of the night last night with this image, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, that is brilliant. I got to share this. And then when I actually, go back and look at the notes that I made in the middle of the night, it seems a little silly, but this was really clear to me that this moment looks just like a big bowl scraping moment. So we're brownie batter, and we've been mixed up, and we're raw, and that's delicious and nice, and we're being held by a big metal bowl. And this moment we're getting poured out of that bowl, and we're getting ready to be baked, transformed, alchemized into something new. So if you can imagine yourself, all of us, as batter that will be baked into something else. Are you following me? This is silly, but it really still feels right to me. And we're right at this stage of being scraped out of the bowl. We've had this container holding us, and it felt so good, right? We don't want to be all over the place. But this batter getting scraped right now is this moment of anticipation right before being alchemized, baked into something else. So we've got to get scraped out of the bowl, but it's uncomfortable because there's going to be little parts that don't get into the bowl, right? Some of this is going to be left behind. Some of our familiarity will be left behind. And I think that's, what gets washed away, composted, sent into the septic system to be refreshed, hopefully, turned into fresh water again. I think this scraping is uncomfortable. So maybe the bowl is comfortable or familiar, but we can't stay in the bowl because we're going to be a whole different thing. And maybe this is hard for me to get my sensibilities wrapped around the fact that this bowl, this outer authority, you don't need it anymore when you're a fully baked brownie. Is this still working? But, a brownie doesn't need the bowl anymore. You can put it in the bowl, but it doesn't need the bowl. So I know this is just silly, but it's the way that it appears to me, this full moon of being scraped out of the bowl. And you can understand, maybe there's these moments of wonderful exhilaration and liberation, and other moments, some sadness and departure and having to let go, maybe feeling suddenly of some beloved and familiar ways of being. So I'm feeling this tenderness around this moment of letting go of familiar ways and loving those ways for bringing us to where we are. And also just letting go happen. Just slowly ungripping the hand and holding our palms out in a kind of form of surrender. And also maybe think about how you shrug your hands I don't know, and your hands are wide open. It's that same kind of openness of seeing. Let's see. So let's move on and let's see what the I Ching has to say about this moment now. So I Ching, divine knower of what cannot be known and still will not be known, but just send us in a direction. give us a thinking pattern to hold on to for this moment now. We get hexagram 28, great exceeding. Also great traverses, and also maybe the most familiar, preponderance of the great. When you exceed something, you cross over a line and make a transition. The traditional Chinese house has a structure like an old-fashioned tent. Uprights support a horizontal ridgepole, and all the weight of the roof and walls is suspended from there. Here, the ridgepole's limits have been exceeded. The supporting framework is no longer adequate to the weight it's asked to bear. Doesn't that sound just right? This bowl is no longer adequate to the weight. This bowl that I'm talking about, right? The external authority is no longer adequate to the weight of the needs of the people. That sounds very grand, but I like it. This means stress and also a greatness of spirit and purpose that goes beyond the scope of the situation. It is fruitful to have a direction to go, to reach out imaginatively and explore. Since things cannot hold up as they are, there must be movement. This one is so good. I mean, this is so accurate to what I pulled through in the beginning part. And I did not have the reading. I didn't know what this was until I had already done the first part. But listen to this. It makes me feel good, right, to have this kind of validation. This marks a transition time in a life, an entry into liminal space where structures dissolve, and there is a reordering of the fundamental principles. It is the act of standing for your ideals and stepping across the threshold, a crisis in life when you must stand by what you know to be true and find the power to exist independent of collective norms. Life and death are involved in this step. This is a letting go of the past and the emergence of the power to lead your life. I know that probably doesn't feel as thrilling to you. I'm in this sort of goosebumpy moment. I want to read it again. This marks a transition time in a life, an entry into liminal space where structures dissolve. Right? That's the outer authority dissolving, and a reordering of the fundamental principles. It is the act of standing for your ideals and stepping across the threshold, a crisis in life where you must stand by what you know to be true and find the power to exist independent of collective norms. Life and death are involved in this step. This is a letting go of the past and the emergence of the power to lead your life. Feels big, doesn't it? We get changing lines 2 and 5. 2 says, the framework gains a new lease of life and nothing fails to bear fruit. Even if it seemed exhausted, it can hold space for something new, young, and fertile. And line 5 says, this is renewal for its own sake. It has nothing to do with future lasting results. How to react? Do we enjoy the flowers or condemn the waste? If we can do neither, no blame, no praise. This is beyond the patterns we're familiar with and cannot be judged. This moves to 62, small exceeding, small traverses, the flying bird. A transition, adapt to each thing, very carefully, very small. Spread the word, stay in the process. Major site of initiation and creative transformation. Yes, all sounds good. Questions to ask here. Do you need to cross a line? What small things can you do to meet the needs of the situation? And how can you take even more care? So as we move into this new way of being, way of moving ourselves through our lives, how can we take care? How can we rest more? What are the smallest things that we can do that move us forward into this new way of being, this initiation? Exceeding or going past is a transition, the moment when you step over a line, and small exceeding means making this crossing in small ways, going beyond boundaries and structures, but paying close attention to them, always responding and adjusting like a humble traveler crossing over great mountains. This is a creative way to engage with the world, no matter how small you feel. You're in no position to realize great things all at once, but it is worthwhile to do the smaller things that are within your capacity, taking small steps with consistent purpose. Small exceeding is like a bird in flight, small, exposed, and vulnerable as it crosses over a vast expanse of sky. It must come down and settle eventually, even as it passes by and is gone. Its call reminds you not to go against your nature and overreach yourself. For your own unique call to be heard, you need to fly closer to the ground and pay attention to details, creating a more sensitive connection with your world. When you come down to earth in this way, scaling down your aspirations, crossing over in small ways, and doing small works, then you enjoy great good fortune, which I always love to hear. Great good fortune, great good fortune. I love it. I think that idea of the small, of the bird flying and landing and flying and landing is really sensible as we try one little moment of self-advocacy. Learning how to live with this new way of inner authority and letting some of those outer conditionings fall away is not easy. So I wish you well with this full moon passage. I wonder in what ways you're feeling the same things that I'm feeling. In what ways are you advocating for yourself, even the smallest ways, even the littlest choices that you're making? Those all amount to bigger and bigger things and ways of feeling your freedom in the world and inside. So that's it for this time. Next time we have a new moon, which brings its own sort of clarity, preciseness. I think of the new moon as having a precision about it. It is a definitive starting point, and that always feels nice. I love that new beginning aspect of it. So I don't know what we will have in store for us at the new moon, but I look forward to being here again with you soon. As always, you can find me at www.annheadley.com or on Patreon, www.patreon.com/watermoonstudios. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, may you be well. May you know peace, and may all beings be well. May all beings know peace.